Welcome, Aibon. So in today's lesson, we are going to have a look at the book 7, Cambridge book 7, right? Which is common for academic as well as general students. And obviously, as you know, the speaking component is common for both categories. So we're going to have a look at the speaking test in book 7, and we'll just run through the questions so that while you're watching this, at least you're doing those books, right? So, this part of the test begins with the examiner introducing him or herself and checking the candidate's identification. It then continues as an interview. In the interview, the examiner asks about the candidate, about their home, work or studies, and other familiar topics. So that is part 1. Keeping in contact with people. So let's think that this is an example for a part 1 question. So the examiner would say, let's talk about keeping in contact with people. How do you usually contact your friends and why? So usually I call my friends or I message them on WhatsApp. The reason is, I would just talk to them to keep in touch. Sometimes I would call them if I need to gossip about something, which is not a good thing. But at the end of the day, sometimes we do that. Do you prefer to contact different people in different ways? I think yes. If there are friends abroad, I tend to write to them via mail or sometimes use Facebook Messenger. But if they're local, especially like my parents, close friends, I'd always like to give them a quick buzz or even send them a WhatsApp message. Do you find it easy to keep in contact with friends and family? Oh, that's a good question. When it comes to my family, so my family members, like my close family members, my sister is in the States, my parents are in Sri Lanka, so it's easy to keep in touch with my mum and dad because they're obviously here. But with the time difference, it's hard to keep in touch with my sister as I used to. And then when it comes to my other relations, right, so some of them are in the UK, some of them are in Australia, some of them are in Sweden, some of them are in States. So it's difficult to keep in touch with all of them because we've got different time differences. So it can be a little difficult to keep in touch with them. In your country, did people in the past keep in contact in the same way as they do today? Definitely no. So before communication was so developed, they used to communicate via the pigeon. So they used to write their note, their message, and tie it on a pigeon on the foot or their legs. And then the pigeon used to fly away and give the message. But then later on, with the communication being developed, people used to send mails, right? So you actually write on a piece of paper and then you mail it. But later on, as technology developed, people started sending emails and they got WhatsApp, Messenger, Emo, Viber, so many other ways of communicating. So communication actually became much easier now. So how they keep in contact nowadays is more digital, whereas in the past it was more paper-based and sending messages via like actual mail, and the postman used to deliver it. So I think there is a difference. Right. So probably having a look at some of the answers for each one, which we did, okay? You can answer them on your own now. So once the questions are here, I put them separately so you can easily answer them. Let's have a look at part 2 on your cue card. So remember, the topic for your talk will be written on a card, which the examiner will hand you. Read it carefully and then make notes. You don't make notes on the card. They will give you a separate paper and a pencil. You can make notes on that if you wish. Now, another question students have is that, Miss, if you're doing computer-based, Do we do it online? No, you don't, okay? Even though you do reading, writing, listening via the computer, speaking will be done with a physical examiner in a speaking room. So, describe a party that you enjoyed. You should say whose party it was and what it was celebrating, where the party was held and who went, and what people did during the party, and explain what you enjoyed about this party. So if I was to talk about this, before I run through that, let me just quickly give you some important tips. You will have to talk about the topic for about 1 to 2 minutes. You have 1 minute to prepare as to what you're going to say. And if you need, you can make some notes. The examiner will ask you, all right, remember you have 1 to 2 minutes for this, so don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please? Right? All right, so let's go here and look at the question. So, describe a party that you enjoyed. So you could probably talk about a birthday party. I would say the 18th birthday party. Let's just change the color. I'd like to take purple. So you can take your 18th birthday. Okay, and it was my birthday. Where the party was held, so it was held at, let's say, Kingsbury. We're not supposed to promote either one, I'm just using it in terms of helping you out with a place. So, who went to it? All my friends. What the people did during the party, so dance, games, eat and drink. What you enjoyed about this party, so it was special. It was obviously memorable. Okay. So I'd like to describe a party that I enjoyed, and it was my 18th birthday. Because it was like a milestone in my life. My parents had organized my surprise birthday at the Kingsbury Hotel, and all my friends and family members were present. Talking about what the people did during the party was, the first thing is obviously, as I walked in, everyone screamed surprise because it was a surprise birthday. And I had this really nice 2-tier cake that my mum had kind of got it customized. So we cut the cake and everyone sang happy birthday. And then we had a few games, which was fun. We had paper dancing, we had freeze, we had baila dancing competition, and we had a water, it was like with the water balloon. And we also had feeding yogurt, so it was fun. We had a lot of games. And then obviously, my parents had also invited a famous band to sing, and we all danced throughout the birthday party till late. I would say it was late night, nearly till midnight. And after that, lots of people, my parents had organized a dinner for them. So everyone had dinner, and they had like juice and liquor as well, the ones who were drinking liquor. And explain what I enjoyed about the party was mainly, it was a milestone in my life, and the fact that it was a surprise birthday and arranged in a 5-star hotel was something that I would never ever forget. And that feeling of being, surprised, and obviously I got a lot of nice gifts, and my parents being there, my family, even my cousins from abroad were there that day. So they surprised me. So we met after a very long time, probably after about, say, 5-10 years. So I think that was another reason why I enjoyed this party, and I would never ever forget it. Alright, so I think you have a good understanding as to how to answer this, right? You can choose your own party. I chose my birthday party. You can choose your own party, maybe anniversary, okay? Part 3, it's like a two-way discussion. Family parties, because we were talking about parties, part 3 will be a continuation of part 2. That means you wouldn't have completely isolated topics. It would have some link to part 2. What are the main reasons why people organize family parties in your country? So in my country, Sri Lanka, people organize family parties because they want to make sure that they have more family time, and a lot of family members gather for a specific party to share their free time, have a chat, enjoy a little snack or maybe a meal, and to meet each other. In some places, people spend a lot of money on parties that celebrate special family events. Is this true in your country? Do you think this is a good trend or a bad trend? So in my country, not everyone is rich, but some families or some people actually do spend a lot of money on their family events. Now, this is not like a trend in Sri Lanka, but people spending a lot of money on family events is their choice. If they have the financial capacity, I don't see the reason why they should not spend and have fun. But if they don't have the capacity, I think they should just enjoy themselves at home. There is no reason why you can't, but you don't need to spend a lot of money. But taking this as a trend, if this becomes trendy, spending a lot of money on family gatherings or events, I don't think that is a good trend, because you don't need to waste money just because you have it. You could rather utilize it and do something more productive. Are there many differences between family parties and parties given by friends? Why do you think this is? Well, I think there is a difference, because when you're with family, you tend to be within a certain frame, and maybe your behavior and the way you speak and dress could be different. Whereas with friends, you're much more relaxed. So your dress sense, your behavior would be quite different. Let's talk about national celebrations. What kinds of national celebration do you have in your country? So I think Christmas is like a national celebration. We have the National Day, which is the 4th of February, where people celebrated the freedom, the day we got freedom as a nation. And then obviously the Sinhala and Tamil New Year is another day that we celebrate. Who tends to enjoy national celebrations more, young people or old people? I think it's the younger generation, because they tend to be more enthusiastic about a celebration time. So I feel younger people are more willing to celebrate and understand the reasons why we are celebrating this special event. Why do you think some people think that national celebrations are a waste of government money? Would you agree or disagree? It depends. If it's like you are going to celebrate the National War Hero Day or something like that, I think it's not a waste of money. But if you're going to spend on things which are unnecessary for those days, and if you want to celebrate it, you could do it. You don't have to do it in a grand scale where you spend tons of money on it. You could rather do it in a more cost-effective manner, but you could celebrate the day as well. So I kind of disagree with this view, but it depends on how the people spend their money. Then talking about family parties. What are the main reasons people organize family parties in your country? So we spoke about that. We spoke about these topics again, right? Right, okay, so I think we've touched a bit on celebrations. We've had a look at national celebrations. We've had a look at family parties as well, right? Moving on to test 2, right? So again, let me remind you, part 1 begins with the examiner introducing him or herself and making sure they check the candidate's identification, and it continues like a interview. So we're going to talk a bit about laughing. What kinds of things make you laugh? Well, funny things make me laugh. Sometimes happy things don't make me laugh, but they make me smile. Do you like making other people laugh? I do, because it's nice to be happy and cheerful. And making other people laugh is obviously good for their health as well. Just a little chuckle once in a while wouldn't really harm anyone. So I think I do enjoy it. Do you think it's important for people to laugh? I do think it's important because people need to be happy. If you're grumpy and negative, the vibes around you would always be the same. So in order for you to be positive and vibrant and enthusiastic, I think it's important to laugh. Is laughing the same as feeling happy? Do you think? Right. Yeah, I mean, it does have a connection, but laughing is like a verb where you go, you laugh, right? And smile is just this. But happy might not necessarily reflect through laughing always. When you laugh, yes, it does reflect that you're happy and then you understand the humor, but I don't think it is kind of the same. It does reflect at certain points, but you could be happy and content, but you don't need to laugh always. So I don't think it's the same, but I think it does have a connection at certain times. All right, so moving on, we're going to have a look at a part 2 card. The topic for your talk obviously will be written and they'll give you the card, right? And you will have a minute to talk about the topic, 1 to 2 minutes to talk about it. You can make notes on a paper and they'll give you a piece of pencil. To do that, you have 1 minute. So when you finish, the 1 minute is up, the examiner will say, all right, remember you have 1 to 2 minutes for this. So don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please? So what's the topic? Describe an idea you had improving something at work or college. When and where you had your idea, what your idea was, who you told about your idea, and explain why you thought your idea would make an improvement, okay? So I would say during college time, the idea was to come up with a magazine monthly. When and where you had your idea, when and where you had your idea. So during university, okay, let's say college, grade 13. What your idea was, right, who you had your class teacher and then principal. All right. Describing about an idea that I had for improving something at college was actually my idea was to get done a magazine every month, and this happened when I was in college, or rather for us in Sri Lanka school, when I was in grade 13. Now my idea about the magazine was to publish a monthly magazine where all the grades, and we had, our school was from grade 6 to 13 onwards, so all the students were allowed to give in their articles, right? And it could be trilingual, so that it would cater for everyone. and from different topics. It could be English, it could be history, it could be pictures if you're doing arts, right? But it was obviously not for dancing and singing because it was a published magazine. I told this idea to my class teacher, and then she had arranged a meeting with the principal, the vice principal, and a group of other teachers who were going to decide if this idea was a good idea to implement. So at the end of the discussion, they decided to implement this idea, which was a monthly magazine. And why I thought my idea would make a difference was I found a lot of students in my school, they were really talented, right? They could write poems, they could write short stories, and they could write this lovely nisandas. In Sinhalese we call them. They're a type of poems, but they're really nice. So, and lots of children could really draw, paint, and they were artistic. So I felt that that would give a chance for the creative students. It would serve as a platform for the creative students to freely put out their ideas, which would in the long run help them to improve their skills. It could be writing or drawing or, writing poems, writing short stories. So I felt that would be a really good idea. And I think to date, it's something that they implement, but not on a monthly basis, but at an annual, they have it as an annual magazine published every year. So you can, tell something, okay? Might not necessarily be something truthful, but if you can catch and finish off all these bullet points and catch the examiner's attention by using vocabulary, pronunciation, fluency, grammar, if they're good, then you're looking at a good score. Right. Now you might be wondering why I haven't put you sample answers, right? The reason is I'm giving you the answers, okay? And it also gives you the freedom to answer the questions, record it, and then if you want, you could put it as a comment, the recording. If not, it would actually help you to develop on your own, because if I always have a structured answer, then you're never going to learn anything outside, right? So I've had structured answers, if you remember, in the first few speaking lessons, but then later on and off, I might not have answers, just to give you a bit of freedom to use the language and practice on your own. So part 3, we're going to talk more about ideas in education. Some people think that education should be about memorizing the important ideas of the past. Do you agree or disagree? I completely disagree with this, and I don't think education should be about memorizing important ideas in the past. Education should be where the student freely learns subject matters, but not just subject matters, but also morals and values. So for a person to grow up as a good citizen, as a good human being, education is important. But not just the paper qualification, but like I said, the morals, the values are important when we mold a child. Should education encourage students to have their own new ideas? Definitely yes. Being a creative person, being able to think outside the box is obviously going to get you a competitive edge over the others. So making sure that students kind of get that skill from a young age should be something really good to train. So encouraging them would definitely be a positive thing. How do you think teachers could help students to develop and share their own ideas? What I think in our school system is that the Sri Lankan school system, at least the state schools that I learned, they made sure that we were always taught something as to what they want it, how they taught it, how they saw it is what they wanted us to see it through, right? So giving freedom would be something really important. Teachers need to give students the freedom to be able to think and develop and share their ideas. So I tend to feel that because there are a lot of students in the class, and even if sometimes a student wants to raise their ideas, they go, we don't have time for this, can we move on into the next lesson? So because we're in such a rush, because we've got a lot to cover in a syllabus, sometimes we can hinder the creative side of a student and they would not share their ideas with the teacher. And once they're being turned down so many times in school, the chances are that when they go out of school, they would never share their ideas either. So it's important that teachers understand the responsibility of giving little kids or students the chance to speak up and share their ideas. So talking more about ideas in the workplace, should employers encourage their workers to have new ideas by improving the company? Yes, definitely. Even though you have a really good product, every product comes to an end in their product life cycle, right? So there would be a decline after some time. In order for a company to sustain, it's important that they come up with new ideas, new marketing strategies, competitive pricing strategies, new features to add to give a competitive advantage over the competitors is important. So therefore, encouraging the workers or the employees to come up with new ideas is really important for the employer, for them to stay in business in the long run. Do you think people sometimes dislike ideas just because they are new? I think sometimes yes. If you aren't a person who values creative ideas, you would tend to sometimes dislike new ideas. Some people don't like change and they can't adapt to change. They like to move as it is and they like to move with the flow and just, go on as they are. They don't like to take into account new ideas and change. So therefore, some of them would dislike this idea. What is more difficult? Having new ideas or putting them into practice? Which is more important for a successful company? I think putting new ideas into practice is what is difficult, as I told you. So what is more important is also not just having new ideas, but putting them into practice. You can have a brilliant new idea, but if no one knows it and you're not going to sell that idea and you're not going to put it into practice, you're never going to be successful, right? So having new ideas is great, but putting them into practice makes your company successful. And what is hard is actually trying to implement it. Because as I told you before, not everyone likes change, okay? So for an example, if you say, oh, we're going to privatize all the governmental organizations, would it be good or bad? Some people might not really like it because they're changing the way that they are working, their work practices, and they wouldn't really want to do that. So it's not just having a new idea to be efficient and productive, but putting it into practice sometimes could be a real problem. Test 3. So you know the introduction. You start off with the examiner introducing him or herself, and then the verification goes, and then we move on into part 1. So if you haven't gone through the verification and the check, please go through the first 2 or 3 lessons. It has the exact wording how the examiners would run through the candidate's identification. Right, okay, so moving on, let's have a look at a typical part 1. Cold weather. Have you ever been in very cold weather? Yes, I have, and this was when I was living in the UK. During winter, it was really cold. How often is the weather cold where you come from? So I come from Sri Lanka, and usually Sri Lanka isn't a very cold country. It's a tropical country, but Nuwara, which is a certain part in Sri Lanka, tends to be fairly a bit colder than the other parts. Are some parts of your country colder than the others? Just as I told you before, Nuwara tends to be colder than the other parts of Sri Lanka. And why? Because I think it's known as Little England. It's in the hill country, so the weather tends to be much cooler and colder. Would you prefer to live in a hot place or a cold place? I prefer to live in a hot place because I like to be cheerful and enthusiastic, and the weather matters for me. So I like to be in a hot place. Now, you can give different answers. මේ මම කියන නිකන් ඔයගොල්ලන්ට උත්තර දෙන්න. So try to start answering like that. Okay? Now, some students ask me, how can we get ideas? You can get ideas if you go through the questions, plan yourself, and then start answering first few days. Then naturally let it go. Look at the question, read it out, and give an answer. Record yourself. Go back and listen to yourself. That is the way that you can improve your speaking, okay? I mean, improving your speaking fluency. Now, when it comes to vocabulary and all, you should have vocab, and I've done these lessons mostly, like weather, I've done it for you in the beginner level. So all the vocab needed around that, and a few discussion questions in the speaking parts also I've done. So by the time you come to your advanced level, it should be a matter of developing on your fluency, right? Part 2, you will obviously get a written card, and remember, you will have 1 minute to prepare. You need to speak for 1 to 2 minutes. Describe a competition. TV, college, work or sports competition that you took part in. You should say what kind of competition it was and how you found out about it, what you had to do, what the prizes were, and explain why you chose to take part in that competition. So, I would say I took part in a TV competition which was known as Supreme Chef. And it was a cooking competition. How I found out about it is from a newspaper article. What you had to do, prepare a dish of my choice. What the prizes were: first place. So I'd like to talk about a TV competition that I took part in a few years ago, and the name of the competition was named as Supreme Chef, and it was a cooking competition. How I got to know about this cooking competition was that they had a newspaper article published in the Sunday Times newspaper. Now, all the participants had to prepare a dish of their choice, but they had left the ingredients for us, right? So you could use, mix and blend whatever ingredients you wanted, and you could prepare a dish of your choice. Now, the prizes were quite amazing. The first place was you would get an Australian tour to go and get yourself trained in an Australian restaurant along with an Australian chef. The second prize was that you would get trained under a famous chef called Mr. Peter Kurvita, and you would get the training for 6 months. And the third one was obviously the winner was given a cash prize of 100,000. Now, why I chose to take part in this competition was because a few years ago I had this great passion for cooking, and I really wanted to see if I could really cook, right? So my passion kind of developed into kind of a professional level. So I really wanted to see if I could cook, and I wanted to see what the judges would really say about my cooking skills. So that's one reason why I wanted to take part in this. And the other reason was I really enjoyed cooking. I wanted to make sure that the others saw my skill and I was able to show them that I had a talent. So that was the other reason I took part in this famous TV program, which was named as supreme chef. Then you can talk about what you want. So godak lamai අමාරුයි එකපාරට මොන හරි දෙයක් ගැන කතා කරන්න. So I thought I'd touch this on Sinhalese. කතා කරන්න අමාරු නම්, if you're watching the video, you have to practice more, right? IELTS, the secret towards success is practice. Okay? Practice, 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 practice. If you don't practice, you really can't get a good score. So please bear in mind, lots of students ask me, Miss, how can we do it? The key is practice, okay? So moving on into part 3, let's talk more about competitions in school. Why do you think some school teachers use competitions as class activities? I think they use it to encourage students to participate, everyone, as well as the students being a bit competitive is good because they think, oh, I haven't got this, I should try and improve my skills. So that gives a quick, blink, okay, to the students to say they don't understand a certain concept and they see how the other students are performing in class. So that would be something good. Do you think it is good? It is a good thing to give prizes to children who do well at school. That's quite debatable because if you do give prizes, then the others might get demotivated. I don't think you should give prizes. I think you should say, okay, you've done well and give them positive feedback. And if some of them haven't done well, we should give them encouraging feedback and areas for improvement. That would be a better way in my perception. Would you say that schools for young children have become more or less competitive since you were that age? I think it has become far more competitive in Sri Lanka. I see really young kids being very competitive. Even for an example, my own son, unknowingly, so he came back after his first term test, and this was a personal experience. He said, oh, Mom, you know what? You didn't help me, and I haven't got, the 90s as my friends have. I said, oh, that's okay. You've done your best. But he said, no, but all the others, they've done exceptionally well, and their mums teach them at home, and you didn't help me. So actually, for me, I felt that he was doing okay, and I wasn't kind of the person who would force him to sit down and study. But the next term, he was so determined that he said, you know what, you have to come home every day when I'm at home in the afternoon, that's after 2, and you've got to sit down and teach me how to do these things like the Sinhalese and the Buddhism and things like that. And he said, I'm going to get 200 or 300. And I said, okay. I was a bit shocked actually to realize how competitive he was. But I didn't say anything because if I didn't help him out, he would feel that I wasn't supporting him. So I did teach him. And the result was that he did actually get a few hundreds, and he was so happy because his class teacher called and said, you know what, Rain, you've done really well. So I feel that students are more competitive and I'm teaching in university throughout the years. I've felt that they're more competitive, but the university students are much more older in their age groups. But young children, the young learners, I feel are very competitive. Teacher, why did she get this right and more marks, and why haven't I got it right? So that's their level of competitiveness. So I think they're more competitive than I was at a very young age. All right. Talking more about sporting competitions. What are the advantages and disadvantages of intensive training for young sports people? I think the advantages are they become good at their skill. Disadvantages that rigorous training could sometimes demotivate them and they could feel tired. Some people think that competition leads to better performance from sports stars. Others think it just makes players feel insecure. What is your opinion? I'm not quite sure on that, but I feel, looking at it from an outer perspective, I think sports people like competition and that leads to something better. because they can take competitiveness in a positive way. So I feel it is more towards a positive outcome. Do you think that it is possible to become too competitive in sport? In what way? I think yes, some sports people actually they keep high standards and they become extremely competitive, forgetting the fact sometimes that they're working in a group or they're hurting people's feelings by being so extremely competitive. So I think yes, that could happen. All right, so you can see that I do emphasize the answer. I shared a personal experience about my son. I mean, for part 3, sharing an experience is perfectly fine. So building that rapport, showing that fluency, that you understand, that you can relate to the context is always good, right? So the last test in the book, which is test 4, and you know by now part 1 how it starts. So the examiner would introduce him or herself, and then obviously, you start speaking. It runs like an interview. So let's have a look at a typical part 1, traveling to work or college. How do you usually travel to work or college? I usually travel to work by car. And have you always traveled to work in the same way? Yes, I have. Apart from the time that, I wouldn't have my car if given to be repaired or something like that, I would definitely use the car. If not, I would use a cab. What do you like about traveling to work this way? The only thing I like traveling is it's comfortable. Apart from that, I feel it's quite a waste and I'm not supporting the environment. I'd like to use public transport if it was much more comfortable, less crowded. I'd rather prefer to use it. What changes would improve the way you travel? Like I said before, the way I travel, my private vehicle is fine, but if I was to change it, I think if there was an improvement in the public transportation, I'd definitely use that. Now part 2, I'd like you to do this on your own. Describe a piece of electronic equipment that you find useful. You should say what it is, how you learned to use it, how long you have had it, and explain why this piece of electronic equipment is useful, right? So you could talk about maybe the phone or maybe the laptop. Okay, how you learned to use it, right? Maybe your mom taught you, maybe you went for classes, how long you have had it for, and why you find this piece of equipment useful. So phone, you can keep in touch, talk to people, check your email, whereas the laptop would be more like work-oriented, you use it at work. I'd like you to do this on your own, right? Because I've done 3 tests with you. I'd like you to think on your own and approach this. So you have 1 to 2 minutes to speak. You will get 1 minute to prepare and you can make notes if you wish, right? So talking about more in part 3 about technology and housework. What kinds of machines are used for housework in modern homes in your country? I think what kinds of machines are used? Okay, so I would just put an S here. What kinds of machines are used for housework in modern homes? I think there are a few which are used. We use the rice cooker, we use the hot plate, we use the washing machine, we use the heater, we use the blender, we use the iron. Quite a few of equipment, I would say. How have these machines benefited people? Are there any negative effects of using them? Well, I think they've actually benefited people by saving a lot of time and energy of doing things. The only negative thing that I can see is that it increases your electricity bill. Do you think all new homes will be equipped with household machines in the future? I definitely think. I think it would be more advanced than it is today. The reason is the technology is developing rapidly and lots of these equipment have been updated or upgraded in terms of technology. So I definitely think that they would be equipped in the future. Coming to the last question for today, which means for this lesson, right? What kinds of equipment do most workers need to use in offices today? They need the computer. How have developments in technology affect employment in your country? Think about it a bit, right? I'd like you to touch these questions on your own. Now here I gave a short answer. You can work on it more. And then the last question, think about it and give a good answer. Maybe you can even type up your answers in the comment box, right? Some people think that technology has brought more stress than benefits to employed people nowadays. Would you agree or disagree? I would definitely agree, okay, and say obviously there's more stress, right? How would you feel about it? Give reasons. All right, so I think we've done a lot in this lesson. We touched 4 speaking tests, which are like complete speaking tests, right? Which was there in the Cambridge Book 7, and I hope you practice. So that brings us to the end of the lesson, which was about speaking, questions being extracted from Cambridge Book 7.